Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., all rights reserved.
We're back. It's 12 after the hour. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. Thanks for being part of my day. Always a pleasure. I'm Jim Blasingame, and you're listening to the Small Business Advocate Show, and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad Lana Calloway is here, too, ladies and gentlemen. Lana is a new friend. She is, our good friend Mary Cantando, the longtime member of our Brain Trust. Well, Lana was introduced to us by Mary. We really appreciate that because Lana is CEO of Exhibit Resources. She's in the business of helping people like you and me put our best foot forward when we're exhibitors in a trade show. And many of you most of you, all of you have heard me say over the years that you definitely need to be attending your industry trade group the annual gatherings, the conventions, or whatever, the local ones, the regional ones, the national ones, whatever you can go to, and at some point in time, if you haven't already, you may eventually, as I have done hundreds and hundreds of times, be an exhibitor at these conventions. And that's the business she's in, and she's here to tell us about how to do it right. Lana Calloway, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning.
It's good to have you here. Lana, I've been an exhibitor, as I said just now. I've been an exhibitor I don't know how many times. I can't count all the times. And I'm sure I've made all the mistakes you can make, and maybe I've done a couple of things right because I've gotten a little bit of business out of these things over the years. But what are you when you talk to small business owners about being an exhibitor at a convention or some kind of a trade show, and they've never done it before? What do they ask you? What are the questions they ask you?
First of all, they want to know, how do we get started? What's the first step? And, of course, my recommendation to them is to make sure that they are attending the right show, that they are looking at participating in a trade show, that they can find their qualified buyer, that they can make the necessary leads and connections that they need for their business. There's nothing worse than spending money, designing an exhibit, showing up, being at a trade show and having the wrong audience be there. So you have to do the research to make sure you're in the right place. And then after you've made the commitment to go to that trade show, then there are certain things about designing the booth.
Can I stop you for a second there?
Sure.
If you have the time, if you take the long view, and I do believe that exhibiting at trade shows is a journey, not a sprint.
Right.
And by that I mean many of these trade show audiences are communities, and they get to know people, and they like to do business with people they know. And I'm not saying you can't show up at a trade show the first time and do business first time, but sometimes it takes a little while to build relationships. But what I was going to say is, if you've got the time, especially if you're not really, really good at this yet, I recommend that people go to the trade show as an attendee the first time, especially, for example, if they run up on the drop dead date for getting signed up as an exhibitor, there are no more booths or something. Instead of not going until the next year, I recommend that they go as an attendee, walk around, talk to the exhibitors, see what's going on, and learn some things. What do you think?
Absolutely, and I think that's part of the process of determining if that's the right show to be in.
Yep.
If you walk it and you have a first-hand experience with it, that's part of the decision-making process.
Right. So okay, now go ahead with what you were telling us.
Well, then there are different steps that you can take in determining what kind of exhibit that you need, whether it's a portable exhibit or a large exhibit, depending on the image that your company's trying to create at a trade show, whether you need a conference room if you're going to be closing deals and actually writing business at the trade show. So there's lots of factors in deciding what type of exhibit, how you get the exhibit to the trade show hall, how many people do you take, hotel reservations? Are you going to have off-site events like
Right.
a reception or a special event that ties back in to the trade show? So those are parts of planning the process.
Right, and yeah, all those things come into play. And another thing that I think is pretty important, I've come to find out is pretty important, Lana, is when you have an opportunity to speak to any part of the attendees, even if it's just one little breakout where only a few people are there. I have found whenever I get to be in front of other people, it really drives the activity in my booth. And that more and more conventions are giving, if you talk to them, if you work with them, if you negotiate with them, they're increasingly creating these little breakout opportunities. And if you negotiate with them, maybe pay a little bit more money, they'll give you one of those spotlight events, I think sometimes they call them. You come up with some kind of a little program. Might only be 20 minutes or so. Come up with a program and then tell them where your booth is. It's amazing how that drives traffic. What do you think about that?
I agree 100%. I think if you can sponsor an event, sponsor a luncheon, lead a discussion on one of the breakout groups, be a keynote speaker, any of those opportunities to get in front of the audience, I agree 100%.
Right. Well, what else do we need to know about it?
Well, most of the time people will participate in trade shows as a part of other marketing events. Clients typically don't rely on trade shows solely as their marketing media. This will be a part of maybe print media, radio, TV,
right.
And, of course, the Internet, social marketing. So you tie all of those things together. Our job is to help the clients with the trade show piece of it so that it's incorporated into the overall marketing program.
So the main thing that we want to get across here, folks, is the trade show shouldn't be considered a one-off aberration. It should become an integrated part of your overall marketing strategy.
Yes, that would be the message that I would hope they would get from it.
It makes a lot of sense. Lana, give us your website, please.
Okay, it's exhibitresources.com.
All right, so check that out, folks. Lana, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Lana Calloway is going to help us. We're going to bore down into the details a little bit more, and maybe we can talk about backdrops and exhibit criteria and materials that we take, and including all the things that she does to help her clients. It's almost 20 after. I'm Jim Blasingame. I'll be back after these messages. Stay with me.
Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., intended for the private use of our audience. Except as otherwise provided by copyright law, all other copying, redistribution, or publication without prior written consent is prohibited. All rights reserved.